what I believe are two primary ingredients for liberation. One is a deep inner knowing and conviction that freedom from suffering is absolutely available to the human being right now, if you're willing to do what it takes to earn it. The second one is a burning desire to do whatever it takes to get to that state. I will give up anything I need to give up. I'll lay down any treasure, God. Just get me back to that state. It's the only thing that matters to me anymore. And when I investigated my own suffering, I realized I can't find any other emotion I ever suffer from or have ever suffered from. It's just these three emotions. The answer clearly was sadness, anger, and fear. You can boil down all human suffering to sadness, anger, or fear. Those three emotions are like signals from your inner being that are trying to reflect to you or point you to the wrong belief you're holding in your mind. So that's where the understanding of the three beliefs of ego came into being, was that we feel sadness because of the first belief of ego. We feel angry because of the second belief of ego, and we feel fearful or afraid because of the third belief of the ego.
I feel like we've done a really great job in this conversation, thanks to the teachings of your book and you having them so embodied, of bringing them into real life. So we're not saying you don't get to feel these feelings, not saying that ego's ever going to go away. Learn to walk with it, dance with it, be in sacred reciprocity almost with it. Well, hey there, and welcome back to Fire and Soul, the space to deepen into your divine alignment and further activate your inner awakening. And today's guest, Erin Apke, my neighbor, as it turns out. This is such a gift for us to receive. I could tell you about many of the highlights of this conversation, but what I want to do is invite you to listen to the whole thing. This is a juicy, alive, very relevant conversation, especially with everything going on in our world and how many of us longing to get ourselves free from suffering. And so this conversation, the impetus is his brand new book, The Three Beliefs of Ego, A Sufferer's Guide to Freedom. And it's a beautiful, full circuitous conversation of really landing us into a place of deep remembrance, that I know that you're going to love. This conversation was everything I would hope it would be, and more. So, Erin, if you ever see this, thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us on the show. I want to give a little introduction, a bio of Erin, invite you to the whole conversation, as well as then leave you with an invitation before we drop in. So about Erin, well, many of you may know he was on the show about a year ago, so he is returning for his second time. And I'm sure many of you already follow him, but for those of you who are newer to his work or would like a refresher, he's the author of The Three Beliefs of Ego, spiritual teacher and thought leader who delivers a fresh new perspective on self-realization. His online academy for consciousness expansion, 4D University, has more than 10,000 members. Multiple Gaia TV series, chart-topping spirituality podcast, and Sirius XM radio programs have showcased Erin's passion and purpose, which is to awaken this planet to the awareness of our oneness. You can find out so much more at erinapke.com. And of course, I'll leave links in the show notes of how you can order his book that hits bookstores everywhere on August 12th. I also want to offer an invitation in case it calls. You know, throughout this conversation, we definitely were weaving in part of my own deep inner work journey this past year and a half, and it's been intense, a dark night of the soul, you know, to say the least, and I wouldn't change it for anything. And so deepening into my devotion of certain spiritual technologies that have helped me, amongst many others, are the gene keys, which I know you're familiar with, me talking about that here many times. And then, of course, the somatic awareness work that I have been deeply devoted to these past many months as I am wrapping up my formal training to become a trauma-informed practitioner, to deepen my own capacity to know myself and also to serve, love, and guide the person in front of me if I've given that opportunity, especially through guidance. And so I'm loving that work. And then spiritual alignment. So that trifecta has led me to something that I now call the soul work experience. And this is for really an opportunity to bring us home even more so into that deep remembrance of who we are and why we are here. So this little soul work, your soul work in life and business, is an introductory that I'm rolling out the week of July 21st. And it is open now for you to come check it out and see if this speaks to you. It's only 97 bucks. I really wanted to make it super accessible so that over 3 weeks time we'll meet 3 times live. We'll vote on the day and time together as a group because that's the way I believe it really should go for a group. And it's really to get you that clarity around what your life's work is and understanding how the shadow of that life's work gene key is here to serve you and open you into your greatest gift. Life's work in the gene keys profile, that is the sphere that represents exactly why you are here in terms of how you are meant to create, lead, serve, and prosper in the world. And so this is a beautiful gate, so to speak. And then, of course, when we begin to do that work, we want to know about somatic awareness and really nurture our nervous system so that we are feeling whole and alive, and then aligning this to our own spiritual integrity. So that is the work that's coming up, and I'm super excited about this. It's my first offer in over 18 months, and it's reflective of the deep journey and work that I've been doing. And I feel honored to bring it forth in service to you and anyone who feels called. So if you are curious about that, again, 97 bucks for 3 weeks of a live guided introduction with a lot of people that I know that you will love, then by all means, you can head on over to my website. I'll also link it in the show notes, michelle-sorrow.com/your soul work. All right, my friends, without further ado, please enjoy this amazing conversation with Aaron Apke. Oh my gosh, Aaron, welcome back. It's been almost exactly to the day 1 year since you were on the first time. Welcome back to Fire and Soul.
So great to be back. It's wild how fast time moves. If somebody had said, when were you on Michelle's pod last? I would have said, a couple months ago.
I know, crazy. What
Nope,
was
over a year ago.
super wild is that we just discovered we live 7/10 of a mile from one another, which is crazy.
Yeah, like I
And
could walk to your house right now and we could do this pod in person.
which would be so much fun. But the other thing
It
that I
would.
wanted to say and just take a moment to really honor you, my friend, is that when we were potting for our first time and I was leaving my Calabasas home 2 days later to make the drive to Austin because of a call for 3 years on my soul, like your community, your soul family, they are in Austin waiting for you. Let's go. And it just took me some
Yep.
time to cultivate that courage and to really understand the timing. And then when it was time, it was time. But what I wanted to say is that in that conversation, you were so gracious, as you always are, very kind, very warm, very friendly. But when we hit stop on the recording, you and I kept the conversation going for quite a while. And that's when I had mentioned that I was very interested in the sovereignty space and trust law and some of
Hmm.
that stuff. And you're like, I'm a part of a law dojo. And if you'd ever like to join us, like maybe I can connect you. Next thing I know, I'm at one of the houses of like, one of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
main
yeah.
guides and two of the
Luke Story.
women, Luke's story. I didn't know if we talked about it publicly, but hi, Luke, I love you and your show, and you know that. But there's only 3 women in that group of like 30 men.
Yeah.
And those 2 other women have now become like my best friends.
Nice.
And,
Amazing.
and then that group has grown. And so I started my own little law mastermind. So we've all but almost gotten completely
Wow.
free. We all went to that trust law seminar, as you
Yep.
know, back in October last year. Confluence in the spring, which I hope that you go to sometime because that was incredible with Alex Zek, who's obviously
I
another
went the year
guide.
before this year
Oh my
and it
gosh. Well,
was
maybe you'll go
amazing.
again because it was
I was
incredible.
devastated not to go this year, to be honest.
Oh, I bet. Well, you might have been a little bit busy because you've been working
A little
on some
bit.
things and a lot of expansion. And so I want to catch up there. But first, I had to say thank you because what that gave to me and how it pulled me into Austin after hearing that call for 3 years, I just was like, I'm being called home. I'm being called
Yeah.
home. And now I know I'm home. And it's just like on the 1 year anniversary, just to see you and realize that we even live in the same community and what that's given me this past year has been so bountiful. And I just feel really grateful. And I wanted to share that.
I'm so glad to hear it, Michelle. That's it's so beautiful when you find the place you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people will ask on like some of my 40U calls or whatever it may be, they'll say like, Aaron, how do you know when you're in alignment?
Mm.
And my answer is always, when you're in alignment, you know it with every cell in your being. There's no questioning like, am I in alignment? If you're questioning, am I in alignment? You might not be fully in alignment yet, right? Because when you are, it's a full body yes, no doubt.
Yeah, that's how it feels. And the full body, yes, not only is it excited, like this, ooh, anticipation of each day, but also deeply grounded with like this sense of peace and a sense of belonging and a sense of, I feel so safe, obviously in our neighborhood, but I feel
Mhm.
really, really good here. And so, yeah, thank you for all that you did to help bring me in with so much grace. But in this past year, my friend, you've had a lot going on. You had a baby. Arya
Mhm.
made
Yeah.
her emergence onto this planet. And that is worth anyone pausing right now and going to your Instagram and just reading up on that birth story alone. It was incredible. And so I'll leave
Yeah.
that for anyone just to get curious if they're not already following you, because you're such a favorite from last year, especially, and the beautiful work you've been putting out for so long. But your most recent baby. Oh, I got an advance copy of The Three
Yeah.
Beliefs of
Nice.
Ego, A Sufferer's Guide to Freedom, your first book. And yet when I read it, it felt like I had always known it because it's so much of what you teach. And while
Mhm.
I do get that there's these sort of general sort of observations of the mystical and the metaphysical. However, what you'd shared before we hit record is really hope that it lands and weaves in real world, situations. I was like, that's how it felt for me reading it, just so you
Yeah,
know.
nice.
But so, can we talk about how you even landed on where to start with your first book? I have so many questions for you today, so get ready because I'm gonna bring as much as I got.
Let's go. Fire hose me.
Okay.
Well, that's an easy one because I've known I wanted to write this book from, 2018, the fall of 2018 onwards, after I had, the spiritual awakening experience I describe in the introduction. That's what set off the process of me discovering the three beliefs. And so if you want, I can sort of give the audience like that brief story.
Absolutely.
So the full story is in the introduction, of course, but I had this absolutely life-altering, paradigm-shattering spiritual awakening when I was 28, and I had just gone through a really horrible dark night of the soul. I left Christianity. I left my then Christian wife at the time, moved back in with my parents in California, had no friends at all. Like every friend I had was Christian. So I had zero friends,
Mm,
total life reset. And on top of that, like I don't even know what I believe about God anymore because I've kind of disavowed the Christian God. And so I was in this open place of seeking and was listening to a lot of Enlightenment teachings and Eastern philosophy, but I was just overcome with depression and
mm,
hopelessness, as can often happen when you have a identity crisis, right? When you if you leave a religion or a cult or whatever, right? You have this huge upheaval of your identity, and that can throw the ego for quite a twist. And the thing about my experience was that I had 2 full weeks, 14 days in this, what I call this heavenly state of total inner freedom, Buddhahood, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And at the 2 week mark, I woke up with the thought of realizing, oh, wow, it's been 2 full weeks. I've been in this amazing heavenly state of consciousness, unbroken.
mm,
And so I thought to myself, I wonder if this is enlightenment, maybe. Like maybe it's happened. And that was the first ego thought that came back online. I didn't recognize it at the time. I didn't have the awareness to recognize it at the time. But that very day, the downward spiral began
mm,
and the ego came fully back, but with an angry vengeance
mm,
because ego doesn't like being locked up in the broom closet for 2 weeks while you enjoy a skip through heaven. It's like, whoa, 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 I'm the master of this kingdom. You don't go gallivanting off to heaven without me. You get back here, slave. And ego just tied me right back up in the same old bondage I was in before. But now it's way worse, right? Because being in hell is bad enough by itself, being sent to
mm,
hell. But hell is a lot worse, I'll tell you. After you've been to heaven for a while and then you go back to hell again, the contrast is absolutely unbearable.
mm,
And so that was the gift that I got from the um, awakening and unawakening kind of experience that took place, was that I could not tolerate the suffering anymore, knowing what was available. And before, when I was depressed, I didn't realize that I was actually just putting up with and tolerating an amazing amount of suffering without questioning it. And that's what changed after the experience. And so I had what I believe are two primary ingredients for liberation. One is a deep inner knowing and conviction, like a doubtless conviction that freedom from suffering is absolutely available to the human being right now, if you're willing to do what it takes to earn it. And most people don't have that belief. They really do subconsciously have a strong doubt that maybe enlightenment does exist, maybe, but it surely isn't available to me. Maybe to the Buddha, Ramana Maharshi, those guys get it, but there's no way somebody like me could ever be enlightened. Those are the beliefs we all have, right? About, first of all, just kind of pedestalizing this thing called enlightenment as this grand state of achievement when it's really not that at all. But the second one is a powerful desire, a burning desire to do whatever it takes to get to that state. That's what I had after that experience was I will do anything I need to do. I will give up anything I need to give up. I'll lay down any treasure, God. Just get me back to that state. It's the only thing that matters to me anymore. So I quit bodybuilding, I quit modeling, I quit everything I was doing except my day job and just devoted my entire life to spiritual seeking. And the first question I started asking was, okay, I can sort of remember what that 2 week state of freedom was like. So I can kind of like back engineer it a little bit. So I asked, what was not there in those 2 weeks that is here now? And in terms of suffering, right? Because there was no suffering in those 2 weeks. So it's like now, what emotions are here that weren't there? And the answer clearly was sadness, anger, and fear. And when I investigated my own suffering, I realized I can't find any other emotion I ever suffer from or have ever suffered from. It's just these three emotions. And there's many flavors of them. There's many flavors of sadness. There's many flavors of anger and fear. But those are the three like root emotions, right? You can boil down all human suffering to sadness, anger, or fear. Once I got clear on that, I said, okay, there's no doubt there are these three negative emotions. Now, the next question is, why do I feel these three emotions? Like, why do I feel sad when a certain thing happens and not fearful? Or why do I get angry instead of sad? Like, what causes these emotions? And that question took a while to get some answers from. I really couldn't get to the bottom of that one for many months, probably. And then at some point, the understanding came through that it's something you believe about yourself that causes those emotions. And in fact, it's not that causes the emotion, but actually that those three emotions are like signals from your inner being that are trying to reflect to you or point you to the wrong belief you're holding in your mind. So that's where the understanding of the three beliefs of ego came into being, was that we feel sadness because of the first belief of ego. We feel angry because of the second belief of ego. And we feel fearful or afraid because of the third belief of the ego. And so that's what this kind of book is dedicated to unpacking for the reader, and not just helping you understand like what these beliefs are and where they come from, but most importantly, how to transcend them, right?
Yeah, because you also speak so beautifully, and thank you for that. That was a beautiful backstory to understand that not only was it not difficult to choose which book, but this is the impetus of your awakening. This is the way in which you can teach from what you experience, and that
Yeah.
illusory separation, right? But that like it was necessary. You and I don't know if you're going to go into the core beliefs of ego, if you name those, or if we have to wait to get the book. Because if we get to
We
name them,
totally can. Yeah.
okay, cool. If you want to, I would love that. But I also really want everyone to pick it up, because when does it goes live soon, August
August
something.
12th.
August 12th. Thank you for that
Yeah.
reminder. So we'll link everything in the show notes, but you guys got to get this. I mean, I think I read it in 2 days. And then I asked Kim, your publicist,
Wow.
hi, Kim, if you're listening, I'm like, I need the PDF as well. Like, I want to work with GPT to like help me understand different arcs so that I can weave some of
Amazing.
my own, perception into what you're really laying out here. And I ended up having
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
6, 7 different narratives of like how this can apply to my life in certain situations. So it was really cool. But you
I
describe
love it.
suffering as a teacher and even a gift, not to be avoided, but transcended, like you just spoke about. So, what I've written down here, and I'm curious, is what does it take for someone to stop running from pain and instead walk the path of that inner purification that you write about so easily?
Yeah. Well, that is an easy answer, which is your emotions, right?
Mm,
The third chapter of the book is called the emotional guidance system. And to
mhm,
me, it's the whole crux of the book. Like this is the linchpin. You got to get this to get everything else. And that is that your emotions are not um, dictators of behavior. They're not trying to tell you what to do. The ego voice is what grabs the emotion and uses it as the kind of jet fuel to tell you what to do. And you need to punch that person in the face or whatever, cuss them out. The ego weaponizes emotions. The emotion itself is just an energetic signal of what wrong belief is currently active in your mind. So, for example, the first belief of the ego is the belief in lack.
Mm-hmm.
And so I help the reader understand that all sadness stems from a lack belief, period. End of story. It's like, it's so great, isn't it, to know that you can understand sadness that simply. Like it can be that simple. If I'm sad, it's because I either believe I'm lacking something I need or I've lost something I need.
Yeah.
But it's impossible to feel sad if you don't feel you have lost or are lacking something.
Mm.
So once you understand that, you can welcome sadness as a kind of messenger of truth from your inner self coming to warn you about what wrong belief you're holding. Because it's like these beliefs are extremely damaging to your experience of reality, right? They warp your perception, they create suffering. And so the analogy I give in the book is like the reason that these negative emotions have to feel painful and uncomfortable is because there is no other way we would ever know we were believing something wrong, right? Imagine if believing in lack felt great. You just feel so at peace when you think about all the things you're lacking. Like you would never question that belief because it would now be the source of your happiness. So the source, God, creator, has given us this built-in guidance system that, you'll often hear people say, well, you can't trust your emotions because your emotions can lead you astray. So be careful. Trust your thinking, not your emotions. And I just love to flip that upside down in the book because we've gotten it so wrong. And we can look at human history and typical human behavior and know right away we've definitely gotten something wrong here, right?
Mm.
But I think this is one of the biggest pieces, is this kind of estrangement from our emotions or enemy making of our emotions, that the feeling of sadness or the feeling of anger or the feeling of fear come to torture us and, abuse us and whatnot. And as long as you see your emotions like that, yeah, they're always going to feel like abusers to you, and you're never going to be able to transcend them. So you've got to change the way you see your emotions, right? And the famous phrase we've all heard is when you change the way you look at something, the thing you look at changes.
Yes.
And that's what I do in the book with emotions is I help the reader understand you need to look at these three emotions as friends who are trying to help you before it's too late. Sort of like kind of thing. If I'm out in the universe believing in lack, cultivating attachments to everything I want and trying to control everything, I'm going to create an enormous amount of negative karma that's going to have to come back to me in life experiences that hurt and make me suffer more to learn these tough lessons. So my emotions are like, hey, dude, wake up, you're asleep at the wheel kind of thing. And the example in the book is if you and I are driving, Michelle, and you're in the passenger seat and I'm in the driver's seat, we're on a road trip or whatever, and you wake up and you see that I'm asleep at the wheel like you were, and I'm driving us off a cliff. I'm about to drive us off a cliff. And you're like, oh, I got to wake Aaron up or we're both going to die.
Yeah.
In that moment, would you wake me up with like a gentle rub on the back and a whisper of, wake up, Aaron, we're about to drive off a cliff. It's going to be bad. You wouldn't do that, right? And I wouldn't want you to do that. I would get angry at you in heaven after we died and say, why didn't you slap me on the back of the head? Wake me up. That's what you need in a moment of urgency is like, bam, wake up. You're off track. You're about to kill yourself. You're about to hurt yourself. And so when you see your emotions like that they have to hurt, they have to be uncomfortable so that you wake up out of your cognitive dissonance and your false beliefs and go, oh, I gotta change something here, right? This isn't working, what I'm doing. My mind is telling me that through these emotions. So that reframe is everything to me and has made all the difference in my own life and spiritual growth. And I think from another perspective, Michelle, and I don't go into this too in depth in the book, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, is that I've come to see the ego more and more in a very like loving and benevolent way, in that I know that the ego is the source of all human suffering, of course. I know that it's what generates these three beliefs that cause all suffering. And yet, you can still see the ego as this amazing divine creation from the logos, the source intelligence, that it created this enigma we call ego that dominates all human consciousness. And I think when you progress down the spiritual path and you make some progress on the spiritual path, you kind of quickly realize, don't you, that all spiritual growth really does come at the hands of suffering. Like suffering is that thing that drives all spiritual growth. And so the more that you emerge into the understanding of your oneness with God and universal love and these supernal truths, right? The more sensitive you become to drifting out of alignment from them and violating them, harming people, being unrighteous, being selfish. Those kinds of actions hurt more and more. They hurt worse as you awaken, not less.
Yes.
And that's something people don't always think about is that suffering hurts worse as you awaken, not less, because that's why you stop committing those errors, right? Your new sensitivity, that your heart is now more open to creation. You feel more connected and alive and grateful, such that from that state to betray the truth, to violate God's eternal laws, to harm your fellow brothers and sisters is like unbearably painful, even in the slightest ways, right? And so we call it your conscience, but your conscience like continues to grow. And so you start to realize the severity of, if we want to call it sin or violating eternal law, you realize the severity of the negative karma you attract the moment that you violate an eternal truth. And so you're more tuned into that reality because it hurts more. And so from that perspective, you can almost see the ego like the cushion that God created between your true self and just the brutal onslaught of negative karma from the universe. Like if we didn't have the ego to cushion our mind with ignorance and delusion, it's like ignorance is kind of bliss in a way because, for example, like when I was in my early 20s and was still a Christian and was way, way, way more selfish and self-consumed and focused all the time, I could like have it out with somebody on Facebook and just be a total jerk and like, ad hominem them, say things to hurt their feelings and make them feel stupid. And I would like hang up the Facebook debate and be like, that probably wasn't great of me, but oh well, and just move on. Never think about it again. And I would do that day after day. I'm debating Christians on Facebook all day. Never felt really much guilt about it. And now with 10 plus years of spiritual progress, like if I am in like a friendly Facebook debate or Instagram or whatever with somebody like a Christian, for example, and if I feel like I'm always very kind, but if I even feel like I laid it on a little too thick or was a little too uncaring about their feelings in some way, like I'll think about it all day and be like, God, I'm so sorry. Like I'm going to go edit that comment. And I show the comment to a friend and like, dude, this is great. You didn't say anything wrong. And I'm like, yeah, but I feel something wrong about it. And it's like, that's the example I'm trying to show you is you become way more sensitive to misalignment the more you grow spiritually. And so you can look back at your former ignorant, delusional self and be actually grateful you had a big fat ego. Because if you were fully aware of the consequences of your misalignments back then, it would have been unbearable for you, right? The ego actually protects us from our own delusion, in a sense, our own ignorance, and gives us a kind of runway onto the spiritual path. So like it serves a divine purpose. I love the ego. I'm so grateful for the ego, but the ego exists for the divine purpose of being transcended, right? It is the obstacle God has sort of put in front of the third density human to say, once you get over this obstacle, you can join us in the fourth density. You can go to the next realm, right? We all have to conquer the ego. And when we do, the ego in a weird way kind of like transforms into this guru. And it's like, well done, student. It's like, it's the great teacher. And I think that's the best possible way to see your ego.
Yeah, you just took the words right out of my mouth there at the end. All of it was so beautiful. And I was like nodding in full resonance for those who are only listening. And you'd said, I'm curious what your thoughts are, because as you started to share about ego, I was thinking, God, what do I feel? Not just think, but what do I know to be true for myself? And it's like ego is a powerful, masterful teacher in my life, like the
Yeah.
most benevolent. And so I love that you just shared that. But I am curious, before we go back to the other two core beliefs of ego, even though you did mention them, but I want to be sure that everyone got that. And that is, what is your awareness or understanding of shadow and ego, and how are they different, or are they different?
Yeah, it's a great question. My understanding is that they are essentially the same thing, but
Mhm.
thinking of an analogy for this, the shadow is an aspect of the ego,
Mm-hmm.
or I really like Eckhart Tolle's term for it, the pain body,
Yep.
kind of speaking to that subconscious
Mm-hmm.
aspect of your mind that holds all of your traumas and pain and negative core beliefs and all that. And so that accumulation of those things we call the shadow. And we call it that because it eventually and inevitably will surface from the subconscious mind up to the conscious mind. And when it does, it makes us act out our basest, lowest kind of animal instincts of self defense and self preservation and selfishness and greed and all that. And so it's like a dark, we see it as like a dark thing, a dark quality. But the way that I try to help the reader shift their perception of that concept of the shadow is that everything that comes up, everything you experience, literally every emotion that's uncomfortable, everything is the energy body's way of detoxing
Yeah.
that negative emotion. And I give the example of physical detox, which I know you're very familiar with, right? With terrain theory and germ theory and all that.
Mm-hmm.
The old model was germ theory of how we get sick. Of, hey, we get sick because of this. Aaron's walking down the street one day, fit as a fiddle, as healthy as can be. And then Michelle walks by, selfishly having gone out of her house while she's sick with a cold. And, she passes by Aaron, says hi, and coughs on Aaron on accident. And, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, that's okay. And I continue on. And then 10 minutes later, I start to feel sick. And oh no, now I have the cold. Michelle gave me her cold. She victimized me against my will. I was perfectly healthy until you came along, Michelle. And it's this kind of victim model of sickness and health. It's like your health isn't in your own hands. You can do everything right, you can be fully healthy, and some sick person can just walk by and pass on their sickness to you. And so this is obviously a amazing profit model for big pharma and the medical system, but we know for a fact that it's not true because every single study they've ever done on germ theory has not only failed to prove it, but has actually disproven it, meaning the results of the studies, if they're true, would have to mean germ theory is impossible because they've tried this. They've tried to pass sickness from a sick to a healthy person in all these studies, and they can't do it. So I give that analogy with your emotions and say, what if your emotional body is identical to your physical body? And so the question is, well, what is sickness in the physical body then? And as we said, it's detoxing. It's it's the fact that you've accumulated toxins in your body through your environment, the water you drink, poisoned food supply, poisoned soil, breathing in poisoned air from chemtrails, Wi-Fi EMFs. Like we're always kind of taking in toxins. And if the toxins reach a certain threshold, the body says, oops, now we have a problem. I have to get rid of these toxins. I can't maintain what I'm doing in this body unless I get rid of these toxins. And so you get what we call sick. You catch a cold, right? Which is so funny because you didn't catch anything outside yourself. It is the expression of what was inside of you all along. It's your body getting rid of toxins through sweating, nausea, diarrhea, headaches, fever, rashes. These are all the detox pathways that your physical body uses to get rid of negative energy. So I kind of asked the question, what if your emotional body is identical? Meaning every time you feel negative, that negative emotion is actually trying to leave the system. It's trying to be expressed out of the system by your emotional body, which is always seeking balance, just like your physical body. And when you get too loaded up with negative energy, you become extremely triggerable and sensitive, right, to other people in life. You get angry all the time and agitated all the time. And again, your ego paints a victim story of it's so not fair what they said, what they did, and you make it about everybody else. And you don't realize, oh, the reason I feel these emotions about them and what they did is because I'm full of negative energy that I need to get rid of. And so when you see emotional energy that way, it also becomes a very positive shift, I think, in that you can welcome negative emotions, knowing that, hey, this feeling of sadness, it's trying to leave the system right now. But if I resist it, if I suppress it, just like taking a drug from a doctor in a white lab coat, here, take these drugs to suppress those symptoms. And then all it does is compound the problem and take the symptoms out of my awareness a little while longer until, as we know, inevitably a bigger problem is going to happen because those drugs can't fix or heal anything. They can just suppress symptoms with chemicals. And so, can we see how bypassing your feelings, resisting, rejecting them, coping with them, trying to watch TV when you feel sad to distract yourself. All of that is like a pharma drug that's just, you're just suppressing the symptom, but you're not healing the problem. And so to heal the problem, we have to welcome the emotion, understand that it's here for a reason and a purpose, and then let it express that purpose. And the real purpose that I speak about in the book is the emotions trying to tell you which one of those three pesky beliefs is dominating your mind right now.
Beautiful. Great segue. Oh, I have so much that I want to thread in from what you just shared, but I also want to get back for those who are hanging. What are the other two beliefs that they might not have heard earlier? So let's just recap from there the top, well, the three egoic beliefs, and then let's associate the emotions, right, to that. And then I also want to talk about you don't you give a metaphor, or did I write this out myself? Roots, branches, and tree? Or is that mine?
I think that's yours.
Okay, cool. So the roots would be the three or egoic beliefs, which are, you want
You
to
want to
share?
say them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's lack,
hmm
number one, attachment, number two, and control is number three.
I don't identify with any of those. Okay, so those are the beliefs. Then it looks like what I have here are the branches to this tree, and that's the emotions that correlate to each one of these core beliefs, and they are.
Nice. Sadness with the first belief in lack.
Mhm.
Anger is the emotion that signals an attachment. And that's pretty obvious, right? Like, why do you get angry ever? Because a goal is blocked, right? An outcome you wanted is getting blocked. And so what the anger is trying to tell you is, oh, you're angry because you have an outcome on the pedestal right now. You're attached to an outcome. So attachment is like the most convenient word for it, but I also call it outcome happiness. Like the belief that my happiness, the fulfillment of my lack is out there in the world somewhere. And if I go out and seek enough, I'll find my happiness out there. So that's the second belief. And then the third belief, control, is signaled by fear. And that's also pretty easy to see because you can ask the question, why do people have panic attacks and anxiety attacks? What is a panic attack? Which we all think of it as like the ultimate manifestation of fear, the emotion of fear. And it's always the belief in some kind of loss of control, right? I can't breathe. I can't think. I can't move. You feel like you can't be in control of something that is essential to your survival or your happiness. And so anytime the ego feels its illusory control slipping through its illusory fingers, it starts to freak out. It doesn't like not having control. And so it will panic and it'll freeze, right? So I also liken those three emotions and three beliefs to the flight, fight, freeze response of our animal body.
Mm.
You can see how sadness is a kind of emotional flight response. I
hmm
want to escape my pain. I'm in so much pain and sadness. I want to get away from it, but you can't, right? You can't run from it. So sadness is flight emotionally, anger is fight, obviously, and fear is freeze. And we know that animals have those three responses as well in the wild. So you can kind of see in the animal kingdom the initial manifestation of what will eventually become these three complex human emotions. You know, an animal doesn't feel the kind of existential sadness or anger or fear that a human does, but they do feel a kind of sadness, anger, and fear. And it's through that flight, fight, freeze response. So I also weave that in, and maybe that'll be like the leaves on the branch or something. But I weave
So
that in
good.
just to show people like this is programmed into your biology.
Yeah, okay, well then just to stick with the metaphor that came up through me, but I love obviously the nervous system stress responses, especially because I'm in formal training right now. We're about to finish up. You probably know Will Reason, also based here in the Austin
Yeah,
area,
it
or
rings a
of him.
bell.
He's incredible.
Uh-huh.
He is the founder of an organization called Trauma and Somatics, and they've certified 500 practitioners worldwide so far in just a couple of
Wow,
years.
amazing.
I'll be part of his graduating class this year, but so I was thinking of these
Nice.
animals, and yeah, and what we're all learning right now is ultimately to get back into that window of tolerance where we're feeling just really calm and regulated, right? Really grounded. That's our connection back to God. But sticking with this metaphor of the tree is the egoic structure itself, a system built on separation and false entity. So looking at the branches as the emotional expressions and the roots as the beliefs, just to stick with that metaphor for whatever reason that kind of came through. Solara, my chat, and I love her. But I want to weave it back now to shadow and ego for a moment because of the work that I'm doing with trauma and somatics, and because humanity is in a collective shadow to light moment, it seems. And because in your book, there's a really powerful theme that really speaks to how suffering is unconsciously chosen. So if I
Mhm.
look at that for a moment, and let me see if I can make a question come through, or if not, maybe you'll pick up on what I'm trying to get to here is we're already clearly kind of weaving in this karma to dharma pathway that's obviously throughout the book, right? Like this is not suffering just to make people suffer. It's like by design, it's part of maybe the purification, the evolution process, which is known as kind of being on this 3D earth, that hopefully we're in this shift of consciousness and we're all part of, something that's beginning to evolve through our own inner work, moving into our hearts. But so shadow work, the emotions and all of that kind of expressing and potential suffering that we might unconsciously choose. Could that, in your way of knowing, also relate to the traumas and the unhealed wounds from like adolescent years? That's also part of why we are here and just part of the grand divine design. How does that connect, or does it in your worldview? Did that make sense, what I was trying to ask?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to get into this. In the emotional guidance system chapter, I have a section on the Beauty and the Beast analogy for the shadow. And I just think it's the best way to understand not only what your shadow is, but how to heal it is through the kind of Beauty and the Beast story narrative. And so I go through that and explain how it's literally just point for point. Every part of the story is an amazing description of like the process of healing, meeting and healing your shadow, which is told through the dynamic of Beauty and the Beast, right? Beauty slowly becoming familiar with the beast slowly opening up to Beauty, and then at some point they have a kind of love affair happen, and they fall in love with each other. And the big point I make is that Beauty falls in love with the beast, not his potential, not what he used to be, that he could be a prince, and so if I love him, he'll turn into a handsome prince. Like all of those reasons for loving the beast would have been inauthentic. It wouldn't have been real love, right? Love looks at something as it is and says, I love you perfectly as you are. I don't need or want to change you. But the energetic effect of love on anything always catalyzes change. So, whatever you love perfectly, if it's not already in a perfect state of realization, it will start to transform. But that's not why love loves anything. And so we got to have that understanding with our own shadow. Because what the shadow is, in a sense, to me, is every lack belief you've ever collected in your life. If you think about any traumatic memory you've experienced, abuse, all of it, you can boil it all down to a lack belief in that the abuse, the abandonment, the neglect, the pain that you've suffered in the past all reinforced I am lacking, right? I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable enough. That's why he hurt me. That's why she left me. That's why. It's a reinforcement of the belief in lack. And so that's why it hurts and why it's painful. And so when we know that every aspect of our shadow that we're healing is really just ultimately the same one belief, right? That I'm lacking, then you can, in a sense, you can sort of put the cart before the horse in this way, in that when you know that all my shadow and all my traumas are ultimately just another way of reinforcing this I'm lacking belief, then let me just go right to the heart and just deal with this belief in lack with consistency and devotion every day. Because this belief, as we've described already on this conversation, it's so deeply drilled into your consciousness. It's sort of embedded in every cell of your being on a physical level. Human beings come into this world believing we're lacking, and everyone in our society reinforces it. Everyone else believes it. So, like, you cannot underestimate the unbelievable landscape that this belief covers in your mind. And so, in that way, you have to be equally devoted to transcending and healing this belief as the ego is, committed to installing it and confirming it over and over. Ego will try to use anything it can get its hands on to reinforce this belief that you're lacking, right? Oh, did you hear what she just said? Yeah, it's because you're not really likable enough. Oh, you saw what he just did? It's because you're not lovable enough. And the ego is just looking for evidence, looking for evidence. So, like, you've got to build a real conviction in who you are as a divine being and what it would have to say about God if you were lacking, right? That to me is the real key to transcending lack is, okay, well, although it appears to be true that I'm lacking, what would that say about God if that was true? You would have to be implying that God made an unfinished creation. And that is the feeling we have when we live with this belief in lack, right? We kind of feel like a book left unfinished by its author or a painting left unfinished by its painter. And so people come along to look at us and they're like, well, it's all right, but it looks like it's half finished or something, and they move on. It's like not good enough. And we feel like that's us. We're that painting on the wall that people just walk by because it's unfinished, it's incomplete. And the truth is that that is impossible, right? If God is perfect and omnipotent and omniscient, then God is incapable of creating imperfection. And I really get into the philosophy of lack deeply in this book for this reason, is that we've got to go down into your subconscious mind and rewire the circuits down there. Your basic beliefs about reality are wrong and they're damaging you. And so I ask questions to the reader to get them to really think about the implications of, like, oh yeah, if the universe is infinite, then that would mean that literally the only thing that cannot exist in an infinite universe is lack. It's the only thing that can exist, right? Everything else is abundance. Everywhere you look, there's an abundance of everything: sky, trees, grass, insects, animals, people, breath, thoughts, feelings. It's all abundance. And yet here I am, like, drowning in this little phone booth of my own imagination that I'm lacking. I mean, I don't have enough. I'm not good enough. And it's like, just look at the universe around you, man. Do you see lack anywhere? Can you point to lack? What would lack even look like? How would you know it was lack? What does it weigh? What color is it? You know, it is a fantasy of the human mind in every way. God did not create lack because lack does not exist. It cannot exist in God. And so I really try to just hammer that idea in multiple chapters of this book so that you leave feeling like you had some kind of psychic surgery done on you from reading this book, that I can't believe this anymore. Like, my philosophic foundation of the universe has been forever altered, that I know lack is impossible to exist. And so the question I answer is, then why do we seem to experience it? Then why is my bank account empty, Aaron? Then why don't I have any love in my life, Aaron? And I go next into that question of, and really I pull mostly from A Course in Miracles for that, just the basic philosophy that I unpack and unravel, which is the way we correct the first belief. And so I'll give this to the audience who's listening, is an amazing line from A Course in Miracles that totally changed my life when I read it. And it says, only what I have not given can ever be lacking. See, it's like soul food, right? When you hear that, you just go, yes, that has to be true. That's the only thing that makes sense. There is no lack. There's just what I'm not giving. And from the perspective of oneness, that concept checks out 100%. Because in a universe of oneness, everything exists in relationship, right? Yes. Everything's connected. Everything depends on everything else. And so one of the metaphysics I break down is this law of relationship, which is giving and receiving. A true relationship in the universe, in God's universe, is giving and receiving, meaning you've got to be in both states at the same time. So if you're just giving, but you never receive, well, then you're not in the flow of abundance. You've cut yourself off. The universe is giving and receiving. So I talk about those two states of what does it mean to live from a state of giving? And what does it mean and what does it look like to live from a state of receiving? And of course, receiving means accepting, right? Yes. I accept whatever happens. I never resist life. I never try to control what's happening. I flow with it. I accept it like a dance, like a relationship, right? Everything the universe gives me is for my highest good. But sometimes it's challenging. Sometimes it's difficult. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's forging me in the fire. It's expanding me. And so when you live from that state of giving and receiving, you are plugged in, baby, to the infinite supply of the universe. And everything you need is given to you now. It just flows to you effortlessly. And I know you've been experiencing that lately.
I have.
So it's about the state that you're in, not what you do or what you know in your brain, what concepts you've learned. It's about how you show up in the universe and demonstrate what you believe. And I'm sorry, but if you're resisting everything that's happening to you, If you're complaining about all your life challenges, the universe just sees that as, I don't want to be a part of this flow of
Hmm.
giving and receiving. I
Hmm.
want to be cut off. And the universe says, thy will be done, my child. And so you will experience the illusion of lack, not because there is lack, but because you've cut yourself off from the flow. And that might be hard for the ego to accept, and it is, but it is the liberating truth once we accept that fact and say, okay, only what I don't give can ever be lacking. So if I seem to be lacking love in my life, I must be giving unloving thoughts in my mind and unloving actions, and I'm not giving the love that I want. And if I feel like I'm, lacking finances and wealth, I must be thinking lack-based thoughts and being jealous of people that have money and judging people who are rich and wealthy. And these are the ways we give the opposite energy of what we're trying to attract. You cannot expect to attract abundance of wealth when you're hating the rich guy and feeling like you're unworthy of money and stuff. These are the things that cut us off because they're not that giving and receiving state. So I unpacked that in great detail as well to just leave the reader with no doubt remaining of, okay, I know exactly what I need to do to plug myself into that flow.
Yeah, that flow from me, there's a term in shamanism called Anyi, and it's sacred reciprocity. And it's how you just describe that giving and receiving, that being open and available and accepting. So I have a question, especially as we're speaking just a few days after the tragedies in Kerr County. And at this point, I think, what, 108 lives. I mean, today is July 10th.
Wow.
And so there's still over 160 people missing. This has impacted someone in my circle, directly. The 17-year-old Malaya Hammond that quite a lot of people know about. It was a child that she homeschooled since she was 3, and it was like her daughter. And she's very close with their family. And they went to actually make peace with the river, to not be angry, but to hold reverence for God. It's
Beautiful.
just this really beautiful, beautiful thing. But I remember as the first few days were going by, and I was just trying to figure out how to be there for my friend, how to keep my heart wide open, and how could I love even more, despite all of the emotion of the sadness, the anger, and the fear by the powers that be, right, that could have caused this or whatever. And I don't really know, and I don't like to spend a whole lot of time there, although I know there's something there maybe for us to weave in a moment. But my point on that is that I kept hearing words that I'd heard you say over and over and over again. If this is on my path, then God, so be it. Then this is on my path. In other words, not resisting it and not being angry about it. And I just thought, God, at what point is there ever sort of like a cutoff? But it seems to me from what you're trying to teach here, from the eternal point of view, right, which is infinitely vast, it's no
Mhm.
matter what is on our path to learn to be with that
Yeah.
because God has presented it on our path for a reason that we may not know, that ego doesn't want us to see in this moment. And so we just suffer. But that ultimately, it brought me closer to God than I ever
Mhm.
remember feeling. And I was already in such profound, deep communion. But it just at my altar, all I wanted to do was be at my altar, just like commune. And whatever that meant for me, going to my altar is a ritual, so it feels really good there, lately especially. But just curious if there's anything there around when things like that happen and they hit so close to us, literally like 30 minutes from where we live, and people in our community directly impacted. Irrespective of that, we're all connected. It's all community. But what are your thoughts on that when it seems to be so unfair?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reality of our relative human experience. And so we have to meet those feelings and make space for them. And I would say to anybody who's asking the same question about tragedies in our world or whatever it may be, that feeling sad about the suffering or the death of other people is not resistance in and of itself.
Mm.
Resistance is, to me, it's a fundamental perception of reality that is flawed and that you act upon. So, for example, and a lot of this, by the way, it's like we're always begging the question, but we can't see it. People ask me these questions all the time as a spiritual teacher, like, "Oh, Aaron, I know how to disprove all your teachings in one foul swoop. Just look at Gaza. See, everything you say is a joke."
Mm.
And like they really think that it's an argument against these teachings, and I understand why. But what I say back to such people is, well, there's a lot of presuppositions in your conclusion here that you need to justify. How do you know for sure that we are all finite beings and that death is the final end of a soul? Because that's what you're
Mm.
implying, right? This thing that happened is so horrible because the universe has blotted out these precious souls from existence. That seems like an extreme supposition to me. Are you sure? How do you know? And of course, they, well, I don't know. I assume so. And so for me, for years now, I've been a huge fan of near-death experiences for this exact reason, because it does seem completely unfair that innocent people die in tragedies or wars or whatever. And if I'm going to believe in an all-loving, all-knowing God, I have to have an answer for that question, at least enough to suffice. And so if we just flip the script and say, what if this is those souls who, in the example you're giving, in the Texas flood, for example, what if this is like their billionth lifetime and they're all eternal beings, and the moment physical death happens, they're in, the heavenly realms with God and their soul family and loved ones who've deceased. What if everything people say who have near-death experiences is true and there's just eternal life? And that's all there is in the universe. There's no death. It's a total illusion, just like lack. We just transition from one life to the next. And if you ask the question, how does that framework feel in terms of fairness? You go, well, that's feels pretty darn fair, right? So then how do we deal with the temporary experience of suffering and tragedy and death? And I think it's absolutely appropriate to feel sadness for the suffering of others. That's love. That shows you're connected. And like you and myself, when I saw the news of first it was 20, children, and then it's like 80, and now it's over 100, it's heartbreaking every time. But it isn't heartbreaking because they died for me. It's heartbreaking to think about the suffering they experienced, those moments of fear and panic, and most especially the suffering of their parents and relatives and friends and all the people that are grieving the loss of that beautiful person in their life. That's real human suffering that happens in this plane, and we have to make room for that. And I think where we definitely go wrong and definitely merit criticism from the atheist or whoever is when we try to use these spiritual truths of, hey, there's just eternal life, nobody really died, and you try to sort of non-duality it all away. That's when we deserve the criticism we're getting of, no, that's bypassing and gaslighting. You're basically telling them, you have no reason to feel sad right now because they didn't really die, and just get over it. That is absolutely a loveless response. Jesus did not demonstrate such a viewpoint to people. Jesus got down in the dirt, eyeball to eyeball with human suffering. And that to me is the real vision of oneness. If we know that there's just eternal life, and every soul walking this planet is an eternal being who's had countless lifetimes before this and will have countless lifetimes after this. And that love connects all of us forever. Whoever you've loved, whoever you have love for, you will meet again and connect with again, whether in this life or the next. Love connects everything. If that's true, then the only appropriate response to somebody who's suffering is to get on your knees with them and cry with them and say, I feel what you feel. You're not alone, because we're one, right? So I think when we try to use spiritual truth to not suffer and dismiss human suffering, we've missed the real message, right? The real message is there's no fear in suffering with people who suffer. There's no fear in getting down on your knees and crying with the mom who lost her child and letting her feel seen and heard, because you know it's all good in the end. You know nothing is ever really lost in God's universe because there's no lack. There's just eternal life. And that is what Jesus taught. That is what near-death experiencers continually say. The millions of NDEs on record now, you get this one equivocal message over and over. It's like we all have different karma from past lives that we're working out. We've all made different sort of soul contracts of why we came here and what catalyst we want to experience. So I don't know why some souls die young and some don't, but I know that life is eternal and nothing is ever lost. And so I can put my faith and trust in that truth so that I don't suffer from the existential things anymore. Like, oh no, they're gone and stuff like that. But I do allow myself to feel sad. And it's a beautiful kind of aching sadness for the connection we feel with each other.
Mm. So beautifully put. Is this something that you've recently, maybe in the last couple of years, kind of shifted more into, maybe with the birth of your daughter, softened into that? Because I swear I remember you never being to the extreme of where we would get the criticism from the atheist, But maybe just being like that, well,
Yeah.
this is on my path and this is how it goes. So I'm not imagining this. There has been a softening into this awareness for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's
Beautiful.
very perceptive of you to pick
Beautiful.
that up. I think as spiritual teachers, right, we have to be willing to evolve and adapting our viewpoints of things
Hmm.
because the moment you pretend like you've arrived at some kind of
It's a
absolute
trap.
truth, from which you dispense your teachings, like you've missed it for sure.
Hmm.
We're all evolving, we're all growing and expanding. And so for me, real evolution, you never dismiss a perspective you used to have because that's not the right approach from oneness. It's not that what you used to believe was not true and wrong or something. It's that it was true from one perspective. Right? When I really used to believe I'm just this temporary separate self named Aaron who has this one shot, one life to find my happiness and completion. Like from that wrong belief, my perspective was true, right?
Hmm.
But it's just that I've outgrown that perspective. And so I can still hold that perspective in mind for the person who still thinks they're their ego and stuck in suffering. I can come down to their level, right? And say, I used to believe that too. And I know how you feel, but I'm no longer limiting myself to that. So it's like a yes and, yes
Hmm.
and, yes and. And we just keep expanding our perspective. And I think what has definitely expanded for me from having a daughter of my own and just from my own suffering and challenges in life and the incredible catalysts I've had to face in the last year have definitely softened me and have given me more of an urgency to make my teachings more grounded and practical for people and not wanting to always be up in the philosophic idealizing of spiritual truth, which is good and important. And I used to hang out there more so than I do now. Now I want to bring that down into the 3D and say, and this is how it looks in real life,
Hmm.
to have this understanding of the emotional guidance system, that all your emotions are your friends. Like, am I telling you that you now shouldn't struggle with negative emotions anymore just because you know that? By no means, right? It's going to still be a struggle, but you bring that new perspective to the struggle and it slowly and gradually erodes away the old perspective, right? So freedom takes time and dedication and self-responsibility, and it doesn't happen overnight because you didn't get yourself into this mess overnight, right? You've gotten yourself into this mess over 30 years of living as an ego. So have some patience with yourself, right? It's going to take time to expand your perspectives and transcend the old beliefs and patterns. And that's self-love, is to give yourself the patience to have an unfolding journey. And, today I don't need to be completely free from all my problems. Can I just be 1% more free today than I was yesterday? Can I evolve 1% more today in this perspective than I had yesterday? That to me is the real attitude of success because we're all evolving and ever changing and shifting, right? That's not going to change in your life. You will always be evolving. There's no arriving. But how you evolve, I think, makes all the difference.
Yeah, that pedestal 3D paradigm of leadership and teachers and all of that is part of what we are seeing crumbling before our very eyes. And those
Yeah.
that know how to walk in this way with a recognition and an understanding and embodiment that we are all walking each other home, right? And there's no hierarchy. And what you were sharing a moment ago about trying to hold the two sort of viewpoints. This is the great paradox of being on this planet. It's the great gift of being
Yeah.
alive, right? And having the honor to be this infinite soul and divine spark in this human vessel with this one little life with all these amazing experiences that right now includes us connecting on Zoom, even though we live a half a mile from one another. It's like, what a gift it all really is. And so, if I can just hold it all ever so lightly, but ever so tenderly in my heart, that I believe is what Christ was really teaching. This is what I try to remember is that if I live with my heart open and if I can remain in my compassion, in my embodiment, but also my resilience and my discernment and my strength, and recognize that everything on my path is a catalyst. That's a teaching that
Yeah.
you've been offering for years. And I remember coming across your work on YouTube originally, and then all the different iterations that your work has evolved into, and so many beautiful different platforms. And my listeners will know you from the Great Awakening podcast, now the Jesus Way podcast, of course, your channel, the 4D University. But I remember you're talking about the catalyst, like, this is like, are you who you say you are? Is this an opportunity to refine, to evolve, to grow, to awaken? Like, it's all just it's so beautiful, but the overarching idea that wants to come through to kind of anchor what you're offering is that we're these multidimensional, multidynamic, infinite souls. And it's not just one way. And
Yeah.
and if we can learn to really receive that and then give into that by also letting others be the same, life be the same, then it's just truly heaven on earth because it's like we're living in the nectar of adventure,
Mhm.
of just the wildest, most beautiful divine ride ever. And
Absolutely.
and that's where my heart is just so full of gratitude at this point. So while I get that these esoteric sort of, ideas and concepts to bring us back to unity consciousness can feel far away and lofty, I feel like we've done a really great job in this conversation, thanks to the teachings of your book and you having them so embodied, of bringing them into real life.
Mhm.
And so we're not saying you don't get to feel these feelings, these emotional expressions. We're not saying that ego is ever going to go away. Learn to walk with it, dance with
Mhm.
it, be in sacred reciprocity almost with it.
Yes, I love the phrase. I don't know where the phrase comes from, but I'm pretty sure it's in the book that the ego is a wonderful servant, but a horrible master. You
Yes.
know, that's the game we're playing is how do we get the ego into the servant position and out of the master position? Because right now, your ego is in the master position and
Yeah.
it is fully convinced it has absolute authority over you.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to let the ego keep the reins over your kingdom? Are you going to take your throne back as the I am, the consciousness, the real being that actually exists in the body is the consciousness that you are itself? And so that aspect of you has to wake up at some point. When you
Mm.
get tired and worn down from being this person, from having to live up to this identity day after day and all your old stories and tell them again and tell them again. And like when that plays its course for you, you're like, I'm so sick of the sound of my own voice. I'm so sick of this character and its stories and its problems and its suffering. I want out. That is a true spiritual awakening, is when you realize I have to be something more than this character that
Yes.
I think I'm playing. Why? Because I'm sick of it. So if I'm the character, who's the I that's sick of the character? There's got to be a duality here. And you
Mm-hmm.
begin to find this inner essence, this awareness, this I am principle I talk about over and over again in the book,
Mm.
that's actually what God is,
Mm.
right? God literally is the first person in the present tense.
Mm.
The way that you know you exist, the fact that you know you exist. And nobody, not the atheist, not the fundamentalist, not the new ager, nobody can deny for a moment that they exist
Mm.
because it requires existence to even say I exist. And so that most unremovable thing from you is the real you. That's the deepest core essence of what you are. And so freedom begins by knowing that, and it begins as a concept, right? When people hear this message, just like I heard it, usually something does awaken. There's a
Mm-hmm.
resonance you feel of like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm the awareness behind the thoughts. You're like,
Yes.
cool, cool. And then the ego just grabs that concept and is like, how can I make this into a weapon? And just turns it into a knife and starts stabbing you with it for a few years. And then you can't live up to the teaching and you're failing and you're an imposter, right? And you
Yeah.
suffer and you struggle. But eventually, the seed of that concept, I am pure awareness. I am that I am, not
Mm.
the ego. I'm
Mm.
something more than this body, this person, this character. That
Mm.
concept starts to become a belief, right? And you start to believe it more.
Mm.
And belief in that way is very good. It's another intermediary step to true knowing, true gnosis.
Mm.
And however long it takes for that belief to finally work its way down through the subconscious to that innermost self and become planted as a knowing, right? A doubtless conviction.
Yes.
I am that I am. I am not the body. I am not the ego. Then that's true transformation, right?
Mm.
And so it's a process. And so somebody's going to read this book and they're going to hear a lot of concepts for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to go, wow, this resonates so much. This is going to change everything. And then your life's going to go on and you're going to pretty much continue on with the same struggles and challenges and suffering. But enlightenment or freedom to me is not so much like, winning a boxing match over the ego or something. It's a lot more like falling asleep at night in the sense that you begin with this desire to fall asleep, like we all begin with this desire to awaken and be free. And so you try to sleep and maybe you breathe or you count sheep or whatever. But at some point you fall asleep. It happens gradually. And when I ask you the next morning, Michelle, like when was the moment you fell asleep last night? Like tell me the exact moment it happened. You go, oh, I can't tell you the moment it happened. It happened slowly and all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of what enlightenment is like.
Mm-hmm.
You look back at your former self, because again, when you're on this path, you're so laser focused. You are
Mm-hmm.
locked in on
Mm-hmm.
all your shadows and blind spots and the beliefs, and you're trying to requalify and transcend all day, every day. You're doing the inner work. And so you're too close to yourself to see yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You literally can't see your own progress most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes somebody like you, earlier making a reflection of, wow, you have this radiant energy to you now. You're like, really? I do? Like you're the last one usually to see your own enlightenment because
Mm-hmm.
all you see is your mistakes. But it's that intensity and tenacity of wanting to be free that causes you to do that relentless inner work. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually you look back and you go, hey, you know what? That trauma I've always struggled with, that painful memory or whatever, that pattern, that behavior that has always kicked my ass. I don't even remember the last time I suffered from that. Like, when was the last time I had that? I suffered over that. Like, God, it must be a year or two ago at least. And like, that's how we evolve is we kind of question, like, when did that thing drop away? And you can't ever really say, right? Because it happened gradually. Like falling asleep happens gradually. So it's like just be on the journey, man. Just be in love with this present moment. What's
Yes.
arising right now that I can see and love and heal and requalify. And if you live like that day after day, yeah, you are going to look back 3 years ago and say, I am a completely different person than I
Mm.
was 3 years ago when I first read that book or whatever. We got to have the patience on the journey to understand you didn't arrive at this position overnight, so you're not going to leave it overnight, but you don't need to because the message isn't you are this limited, lacking ego and you got to get out of this position. Save yourself. That's not the truth. The truth
Mhm.
is, you're not the ego. You never were. You're just wrongly believing you are. And so
Yeah.
you're not actually changing anything about yourself fundamentally. You're just escaping wrong beliefs slowly and surely, day after day. And I think that's a more winning attitude to me than the former.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I just got very moved and touched and a little teary as you were describing like how do you really know when you fell asleep that exact moment like and how do you know you're really evolving? How do you really know you're really coming
Yeah.
home? And I was like, man, that's so true. Like I've been recently having conversations with people that I hadn't spoken to in a year, maybe 18 months, and they're like reflecting how they feel when they're talking to me or how things
Yeah.
occur differently. And I was like, wow, really? And there's a part of me that's like, that's beautiful. That's beautiful to hear because I have been on a relentless path of deep inner work, and that has been my journey for the past 18 months, almost 2 years. And I can look at things and I'm like, oh, I remember when it was uncomfortable to go to the park because I was in hypervigilance of why I couldn't be present with that person and all my
Hmm.
reasons why, right? All the patterns, all the protections. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to like love everyone and sit here and connect and laugh and have a good time. And I now thoroughly enjoy it and look forward to it. And yeah, and I'm just like, wow, when did that happen? I don't know. So
Yeah.
I'm like literally having like my whole last year flash before my eyes as you're sharing. And I really hope that others can find themselves in your share as well, because we know how we're hard on ourselves, but can we also acknowledge and honor, how much we're growing? And like, the mirror is out and there's a lot resurfacing for a lot of people in all the different iterations right now. So this is not a time to like, ooh, hurt ourselves more. This is a time to really, yeah, requalify, as you talk about so beautifully in the book, and to deepen into the true belief and the gnosis of the I am. And so this is
Yeah.
probably a really good place to wrap. I had a question that I was going to ask you. What do you think is one of the most essential truths that we hadn't spoken about yet to help readers who get your book walk away with true sense of liberation? But I honestly feel like you just brought us in with fireworks. Is there anything else that you wish you'd been asked or that you feel really called to share? And then I have one final question. 1.5.
Yeah, we could do 10 hours of podcasting on this topic of all the teachings in this book, but I'd like to leave the listener with this for sure. The final chapter in the book is called Jesus and the Three Beliefs. And I go through the story of Jesus's 40 days in the wilderness. And as we know in the Gospels, he faces those three temptations from Satan. And I show how the three temptations of Satan is an ancient world personification for the human ego, right? It's the devil on your shoulder, the voice in your head. The word Hasatan in Hebrew literally means the adversary.
Mhm.
And it's like, what better name for your ego is there than that? Your ego is like the adversary in your mind all day long.
Mhm.
And so Jesus is essentially in this archetypal story, he's facing his own ego. And you're going to be amazed. I know you've read the book, but you're going to be amazed when you read this chapter at those three temptations. You've probably never thought about it from this perspective, but you're like, oh my gosh, they are perfectly lack attachment and control. And Jesus transcends all three of them. And so I show the way
Mhm.
Jesus transcends these beliefs of his own ego in the wilderness, and how it serves as an archetype of how all of us should also transcend them. But the bigger point for me that I want to leave the reader with on the Jesus note is that Jesus said the kingdom of heaven, which is that state we talked about in the beginning, the kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who goes out sowing seeds, and some falls upon the fertile soil and it grows up and produces tenfold of a crop. Other seed falls upon the rocky soil or the barren soil, and the vines choke it up, the crows eat it up, right? The analogy is we're just meant to sow seeds, and it's not our business where they fall. That's up to the creator. And I think this book is like that. It's like a big dash of seeds thrown at the reader, like so many amazing life-changing truths, all of which have profoundly changed my life personally.
Mhm.
But you've got to make sure you are good soil for those seeds, or they're just going to get choked up.
Mhm.
So, how do we make ourselves good soil?
Mhm.
And I go back to those two foundational prerequisites for liberation that my experience of having that heavenly state for 2 weeks and then being thrown out of heaven and cast into hell, back into my suffering, gave me those two pillars, which is absolute conviction that freedom is possible and available. And then two, a all-consuming desire to do whatever it takes to have that freedom that is inherently yours. You
Yes.
got to have those two ingredients or you're not fertile soil yet.
Mhm.
Because if you want to be free, you're tired of suffering, but deep down, you don't freaking think it's possible,
Mhm.
you know, then
Mhm.
that's the crows eating the seeds, right?
Mhm.
If you think it's possible, but you just don't have the motivation it takes, you're kind of still too pulled in by the world and you want to get famous or whatever, right?
Mhm.
If you're not all in, that's the roots, the weeds choking up the seeds, right? So you don't want to be in either of those camps, or the seeds from this book are going to get choked out. You want to make yourself fertile soil, which is come to that place in yourself, no matter how much self inquiry you have to do to get this belief uprooted, come to the place where you know that you know that you know that freedom is possible for you. It is not an enigma, it is not a fairy tale, pie in the sky kind of thing. God created all of us for this destiny. It is our destiny to be free, and we're only in bondage by our own ignorance of that fact. Like you got to come to grips with that. And then of course you got to make sure you're all in of, is there anything I might want out in the world more than freedom?
Mhm.
Because if there is, I might as well go enjoy that desire and see it to its end so I can be done with it, right?
Mhm.
And that's the path of boga in the yogic philosophy. They say there's yoga and there's boga. Yoga is renunciation and going within and doing the inner work to renounce desire. But boga is the opposite, which is, okay, look, I have all these desires. I'm not going to lie to myself. Like, I want the sex, drugs, rock and roll. I want all of it. Boga is, okay, my friend, go do it.
Yeah.
Go enjoy it. Go explore it. Get your karma out, right? Do all the drugs, have all the sex, listen to all the rock and roll, metaphorically,
Mhm.
and get it out of your system because you will suffer from all of those things. They will lead to more and more of your demise, and you will more and more learn, yeah, none of that stuff can fulfill me. It's all just a hamster wheel. And
Mhm.
you got to come to that place. So it's like, I hope everybody hears me when I say this, like from my heart. Please don't lie to yourself and
Mhm.
tell yourself, oh, yeah, I'm all in. Oh, yeah, I know I can be free. Yep, yep, yep. Like these are deep questions you have to wrestle with and spend time with and really check in with yourself of like, is there
Mhm.
any remnant of this? Because I want to be fertile soil. And so that's like the preliminary work everybody needs to do on the spiritual path is get to those two positions of I know freedom is possible and I'm all in. There's nothing more important to me than my own freedom. And from that place, every seed sown from reading this book is going to go to work in you and will start producing fruit in you naturally and automatically. There's nothing you have to do to embody these truths other than have those two foundations in place. Be square with yourself. This is my life mission. There's nothing more important to me than being free from suffering, being free from my own limiting beliefs. And I know it's possible. Once you have those two things, then this book, any spiritual teaching, no matter what it is a seed planted in fertile soil.
So good. My goodness. Like what you just shared reminds me of an epic conversation that you and Kyle Cease put out, and he's been on the show and coming back again soon. He lives in our neighborhood. Um,
He does, yeah.
of why efforting doesn't work anymore. And I saw you guys at the big one
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
last summer in Glendale. I didn't even get a chance to say hi to you because I was in and out in a day, but
Oh, you were at the
that's
big one.
I was at the big one, a 3-day event with you
Oh,
and
bummer
Kyle
we
and
didn't get
Lori
to.
Ladd. Yeah.
Yeah,
Dr. Geronimo. Wait, your friend,
I don't remember.
Kim something.
Oh, Kim D'Armo, yeah.
Yes, that I then saw at the Trust Law Seminar. Anyway, wild, 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 small world.
Yeah.
But that is the fruits of what you're talking about. And I was
Hmm.
just beginning to get into that, and I feel like, wow, that was a year and a month ago compared to where I feel my soil is now, and how the most important thing for me is like taking care and tending to my soil. There is
Yeah.
nothing more important. This is what will this it's everything, and irrespective of the guy comes in my life, the perfect divine union partnership or whatever, it's all here. I'm missing nothing, I'm lacking
Yeah.
nothing. And it's just like, wow, to actually live that, you want everyone to feel that. And I'm not there all the time every day, but when I
Hmm.
am, I mean, I'm just like, I wish I could share this with everyone. And so I get
Yeah.
what this is all about on some tiny little level of how this is truly your divine mission. So, cannot thank you enough. Again, the Three Beliefs of Ego, available August 12th. If you're listening to this in real time, pick it up, get it, order it. That was the final question ish, but I guess I'm also very curious. Outside of where is the best place to just like be in touch with you and follow your work because you've got a lot of different platforms. So the main platform, I mean, you've been through so much this past year and you are on a rocket ship of growth, clearly. I mean, is there anything specific though in this moment that's lighting you up the most that has nothing to do with work?
Yeah. Yeah. We'd have to do a whole nother podcast, Michelle, for that.
Okay, so everything.
Yeah, but I'll set it up. What's really been alive for me lately, and I've been teaching this in our 40U calls in 40 University on Sundays, is the way that we can inadvertently use spiritual truths or non-duality, for example, being the best example. We can use spiritual concepts to gaslight ourselves and essentially bypass the human level of our experience. And this understanding that, like, these two levels, this duality of the divine and the human, the absolute and the relative, the unlimited and the limited, we are these two selves. And sometimes in spiritual teachings or teachers will say things like, the person doesn't exist. The human is an illusion. The ego is an illusion. And that is true metaphysically, and I would justify that claim, but it needs a caveat because what we don't mean is you aren't experiencing being a human.
Yes.
That's not what the teaching means.
Mhm.
You are experiencing being a human, and your human experience is very real as it's happening.
Mm.
What the Advaita, non-duality teacher means is that in the spiritual philosophy of non-duality, they explain what reality is and what illusion is. And so what is real under that philosophy, which is more of a Hindu philosophy, is something that is not dependent on something outside of itself,
Mhm.
is eternal, it never was born and never dies, and it does not undergo change.
Mhm.
Okay, so by those three definitions, yes, the human is an illusion. It's ultimately not real because the human being definitely depends on things outside of itself,
Mhm.
food, air, water, right? It's definitely not eternal. It lives a very short lifetime and it's constantly undergoing change.
Mhm.
So from that philosophy, the Advaita teacher says the human doesn't exist. And so when someone doesn't have that philosophic insight of what that really means, the ego will hijack that teaching and say, oh, see, so deny everything you're experiencing. You shouldn't suffer. You shouldn't feel these emotions. And that just causes a whole lot of pain and suffering that is unnecessary, right? We don't have to put ourselves through that if we can have the proper understanding that, yes, while the human experience is temporary and not ultimately real, it is happening for a reason. And God didn't make some huge blunder, or a mistake making you a human. The human experience doesn't exist to be denied. That should be obvious. It exists for a very divine and very sacred reason.
Mm.
And when we understand that it's temporary, it makes it more sacred, not less.
Yes.
We lean in more to the human experience when we know this is like a temporary experience my soul is having to catalyze maximal spiritual growth and evolution. So I
Mm.
better take full advantage of every second of this human experience, learn every lesson, love every person, forgive every mistake. Like that's the reason I'm a human being right now. And
Yes.
I am experiencing the human. It is real in that sense from the relative level. And so it's to be loved and appreciated just as much as the divine aspect of us is, because guess what? Your human self is what your divine self is doing right now. And so it doesn't want to hear, this isn't real, deny it, it's an illusion. And I've just seen and experienced those kinds of teachings being brutally weaponized in those ways so many times. And I've done it to myself for years without realizing it. And I even continue to realize how I do it in
Mhm.
subtler and subtler ways.
Yeah.
And so I'm always still open to ways I'm doing this, of trying to downplay my human experience because of a spiritual principle I know. And I just more and more, Michelle, like can't get over this feeling I have that the most enlightened, the most divine and godly possible thing I can do is to fully meet my human experience right now.
Mm.
Don't you think?
Yes, you're reminding me. I was driving back from Yoga 6, hot yoga, about a week ago, and I was driving through
Yeah, I used to
Serene.
go there.
Love it. Serene Hills. It was like 10 a.m., beautiful morning. And I had like music that would feel like worship music just blasting in my car. My dog wasn't with me because normally I don't keep it that high of a decibel, but and the windows were down, which is rare that we get to do here, especially this time of year in Texas,
Yeah,
Central
yeah.
Texas. The air was crisp and I was just wailing, but with gratitude, just like, thank you, betrayer. Thank you, shadow. Thank you, ego. Thank you, wound. Like I was like so
Yeah.
grateful for every ex that had hurt me or that, because it's like, wow, my heart is so open from all this human experience. And I was just like in this beautiful reverence for, yes, the human experience that the divine is allowing me to live, that is giving me access to like this wild adventure that I had shared about earlier. So not only do I get what you're saying, but like I do my best to remember that. And not everyone will get that.
Yeah.
In my trauma and somatics program, I brought up something about being grateful for the wounds and the trauma, and they were like, huh? And at first I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. And I was like, no, that was my truth. And this is where I sit, and I couldn't always be here. I'm celebrating that I'm here, and that I get to share from this lens, not to dismiss that they can't see it right now or
Yeah.
or may not ever, but I'm not going to allow that to dilute my very human experience of being grateful for it all.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yes.
so good, Michelle, and so beautiful that you had that experience.
Mm.
I think the best way to also frame this is that when we're truly free, it's not that we don't experience pain or struggle or challenge. It's just that it flows right through us with no resistance.
Yeah.
And so the example I'll give, like for an analogy's sake, is imagine a fully enlightened, like Buddha or something, right? Buddha's walking down the street, absolutely free in every way. And he sees a poor old woman get hit by a car, right? And so what does the Buddha do? Does the Buddha say, well, that's just an illusion. It didn't really happen. And he keeps walking? Of course not, right? The Buddha runs over to the lady, even though he knows nothing real is happening here. He doesn't use that truth to deny the human experience. And so he stoops down and holds the lady's head in his hands and says, don't move. You've just been hit by a car. I've got you. I'm going to call 911. And he's doing all the human stuff, right? And the Buddha calls 911 to get the ambulance there. And He's supporting her, and she's like, I'm in so much pain. Oh, am I going to die? And she's having this horrible suffering experience. And the Buddha's feeling every ounce of it. And he starts shedding a tear. He's like, I'm with you, my love. Like, you're not alone. I'm going to stay with you until they come. And you would think, for all intents and purposes, man, Buddha's suffering right now because he's holding this lady. He's crying. He's feeling what she's feeling. And the ambulance shows up, and Buddha gives the paramedic all the download of what happened, the cops and stuff, does his due diligence. He's wiping the tears from his eyes and like, thank you so much, noble sir, for what you've done here today. He says, oh, it's my pleasure. And he walks on and continues on his way and sees an old friend. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Mm.
Like, see, he had the full human experience.
Mm.
He let it absolutely flow through him. He felt everything, and then it was done. He
Yes.
was completely free, and he went on to his next experience.
Mm.
That, my friends, is the goal of true transcendence. It doesn't mean you arrive at some state where you never feel an uncomfortable feeling or something. It means it's all divine in your eyes. It all's playing a purpose in God's perfect universe. So you can't resist it. You wouldn't want to resist it. You actually love it. You love
Yes.
feeling sad and grieving with others. You love every aspect of the human experience. Like you just said, I love my shadow. I love my memories. I love my exes, all the pain I've been through. It's all gotten me to the state of freedom I'm at today.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Uh-uh.
And whatever's coming next, I'll be grateful for that too.
Yeah. Beautifully said. So good. Yeah, the full human experience. This is our guide to freedom. I love it. The I amness. Yeah, so beautiful. What a rich, juicy conversation. My heart feels really full. There are going
Yeah,
to be
same.
maybe, thank you, maybe two or three people that have not yet followed your work. So where's the best place to find you, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. I put my same kind of link everywhere. It's just Aaron Abkey, Instagram, youtube.com/.com. Aaron Abkey is where you'll find me. And if you want to work like directly with me, then that's what 40 University is for.
Mhm.
We have three different programs we run on like a cohort or semester basis. And I actually go through the courses with the students on live calls and private calls. And so if you want to do like the deep work on this stuff, that's where you can go. But outside of that, YouTube has, I think I have like 400 videos on YouTube you can watch for the next few
Oh.
years. So plenty of free content to
That's where I
enjoy as
started
well.
with you. It was really incredible how generous your videos are and how much I learned before I ever, had you on the pod or had a chance to connect with you behind the scenes and probably for 2 years, just devouring your content and understanding
Wow.
spiritual intelligence and where I really was and getting honest about that and like not quite where I thought it was and like, oh, that's okay. All right, I have somewhere to go and grow to
Yeah.
and I still love that and your work on Kundalini awakening and yeah, you've done some really beautiful work. Course in Miracles, Law of One. I mean, the Great Awakening, talking about some of the truths that are hard for a lot of people to be with, and the way in which you would approach that. It would give me permission to be um, just more at ease with it all, and be like, all right, so that's happening. Like, am I going to give it all my fear, or am I going to just be in the world and keep going about my business, And so that really helped me in a big way. And then seeing the Jesus Way come out and listening to so many of those episodes with you and James, and I mean, that's got to be a labor of love. And so just celebrating all of your expansion, the birth of your baby girl, Aria. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on the show today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle. That's very kind of you. And it's always a blast talking with you. I can't believe it's been a year since our last pod, but hopefully it won't be another year for our next one.
Let's hope not.